Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we'll be taking a look at the updated tier list for version 2.6. Please note that every 5-star character in Genshin is good. That's why I named the so-called lowest tier as A to send the proper message across. This video is aimed more so at educating on, rather than discriminating the character nuances. So let's get into it. What has changed? Our tier list takes into account floor 12 enemy lineups and reflects that into our rankings. I generally avoid looking at the rotating buffs as it changes every couple of days. This Abyss moves from a single target Golden Wolflord 1 to a focus on shield shredding the Abyss Heralds and Lectors. Hydro and Cryo characters across the board got the biggest bump, and crowd control Anemo characters and Electro supports generally benefited as well. Pyro units on the other hand face the biggest challenges since both sides of the Abyss lie some inefficiencies when running Pyro. Let's not waste any time and jump right in with number 1. Venti's performance in the meta is the closest thing that we have to a Genshin Impact stock market. In just 6 weeks, he went from A tier because of non-crowd controllable mobs like Golden Wolflord and Spectres, to now an insane character that is literally broken. He debuffs enemies with 4-piece VV, batteries your team, insane crowd control, and does solid damage if invested well too. Cheap to build and scales well with investment. Venti is double S tier in 2.6 and is the character with the most drastic change from the previous 2.5 meta. Venti will always be relevant if enemies can be crowd controlled and would feel very lackluster if they can't. While Venti's performance is like a roller coaster ride, Kazuha has proven to be a reliable workhorse since his release. To me, Kazuha is like a dishwasher. There are alternatives to his kit and you could do without him. But once you have him, you will never want to wash dishes manually ever again. He buffs, shreds, crowd controls, and is a joy to play. Like Venti, he has plenty of free-to-play options and also works perfectly well at C0. Anemo crowd control characters see great value in this rotation, given most monsters can be crowd controlled and are of varying elements. Kazuha is double S tier no doubt, and I will argue that he's the best 5-star character in 2.6. Jin trades crowd control for sustain and burst damage. In the current Abyss, crowd control is king in Anemo territory, and generally, most players would prefer bringing Kazuha or Venti if they had a choice. Jin works fairly well with Ayato in a taser comp with Fischl and Albedo. Sustain in this rotation isn't really crucial, and as a result, I'll rank Jin as A tier. A decent solid pick that will fit into most teams fairly well, but faces heavy competition from Kazuha and Venti in the Anemo category. Xiao will work well with Venti as a duo, especially those who want to try him with his new artifacts. Since Venti has crowd control, Xiao does good AoE damage and tackles shields quite well too. But my issue generally with Xiao's style is usually you want to build a team around him rather than him fitting into any team comp. Taking Venti away from Xiao would drastically lower his effectiveness in the current rotation, and clear times this Abyss will be affected. Which I would then argue that Venti is the one making things work, and slotting any other decent DPS would work well with Venti too. Granted, Xiao does not perform poorly in this rotation and actually does pretty well. I rank him A+ tier largely because of the other two Anemo characters being so much more clinical at tackling this Abyss, but could honestly see his rating be S tier in my opinion. Raiden Shogun. Raiden National is a team with Bennett, Xiangling, Xingqiu, and Raiden, and is one of the most efficient teams in Genshin across the various patches. With 2.6, Raiden can also be played in an electro-charged taser comp and see some competitive clear times. Team battery, buffer, and burst DPS all in one, while providing some sort of small electro or field application. Despite 2.6 being largely a Hydro and Cryo one, and Raiden doesn't perform exceptionally well in an electro comp versus say Albedo or Fischl, Raiden's kit is a stable one and to me remains in the top 3 of patch 2.6, especially given the excellent performance of Raiden national teams across patches. Double S tier. Ignoring whatever happened to a kit in the first few days of 2.6, Yoimiya offers good off-field electro application to proc electro charge reactions. The popularized Kokomi Ye taser team does extremely well in the first half of the rotation and could see both Fischl or Albedo filling the second electro slot, possibly Sucrose filling the last slot as well. But for the most part, Raiden likely will be a much more solid option if you wanted to play a 5-star electro character in the first half. Fischl and Albedo together offer tremendous value with Kokomi and would actually be my preferred characters overall. Kokomi aside, Ayato works fairly well with Ye for AoE electro charged, but still needs an electro healer to see even more value. Overall, I move her to A+ tier for having quite a good performance this Abyss given the strength of electro charge, held back by a very strong Raiden and 4-star competition. While electro is a decent element to play in 2.6, a main DPS electro on the other hand is less efficient than a cryo or hydro one. especially taking into consideration the limited number of Hydro sub-DPSs versus excellent number of solid Electro supports. Keqing could arguably be run cryo in a Shenhe Chongyun team, but one would argue that it's much better or better alternatives probably exist. You could make it work if you really wanted to, but you'd probably treat it as a challenge more so than a walk in the park. A tier for Keqing, and better alternatives exist. Cryo units are the most effective way to deal with the triple Abyss Herald shields and the double Hydro Lectors in the second half of the Abyss. Ganyu excels in this rotation even as a burst support type build. 100% cryo application uptime on a Q, plus good sustained DPS. Having her makes the second half a breeze, especially when paired with a battery and sustained character like Diona. Double S tier. While physical generally isn't great at shredding shields, Eula's team comp generally involves a second cryo unit and an Electro character that deals well with the Hydro Abyss Lectors shields. Overall, still a pretty decent character this rotation, but the presence of shielded enemies makes it difficult for Eula to shine with ease. A+ tier. She gets the job done, but would prefer a pure cryo main DPS for 2.6 instead. Like Ganyu, Ayaka destroys the current Abyss rotation with solid sustained DPS and nuke, plus shield destroying bursts. The numerous spread out mobs don't bother Ayaka that much, especially if paired with an Anemo crowd control character like Venti or Sucrose. Solid cryo application to take down shields and an amazing nuke damage most likely places her higher than Ganyu in terms of clear time, but more restrictive in terms of playstyle. Nonetheless, double S tier and in my opinion, the premier cryo unit of 2.6. Cryo applier debuffs enemies' resistances and buffs cryo damage. Shenhe turns even Diona into a DPS. My only issue with ranking her higher is that in order to play Shenhe, you will likely want to run Diona or maybe a healer Hydro character for the most part. Ayaka or Ganyu plus Diona clears this rotation quite well. Since Shenhe is quite restrictive in terms of options for her team comps, I'll rank her S, but is possibly one of the closest to double S tier for this 2.6 rotation. Hutao. Just so you know, this one is a tough one for me to rank, since she has been carrying my account since I got her from her first banner. Always have had a personal bias for her, I'll try to be objective for this analysis. While most people think that Pyro Abyss Heralds are the antithesis of Pyro characters, I actually disagree. Since Hutao generally operates with Xingqiu, she still does amazing damage while the Pyro shields are down, and Xingqiu takes over to shred the Pyro shields. Of course, this isn't optimal and better methods exist, but this respects Hutao for her strong damage still. I find an unorthodox comp of Hutao, Xingqiu, Itto plus Jin very effective in dealing with things the Abyss has to offer, and this rotation is no exception. Unfortunately, Pyro just isn't the favourite child of MiHoYo in 2.6, and I have to give Hutao a heart-wrenching A+ tier. But still, the premier Pyro unit should you choose to play Pyro. I'll run through the next two real quick. Diluc suffers from everything a Pyro main DPS does as well, but multipliers are much more modest versus Hutao. It is possible to run a Cryo Diluc or some sort of unorthodox comp to make him work, and no 5-star character is useless. But this tier list prioritizes efficiency, and Diluc is A tier. Better alternatives exist. While Diluc and Hutao are able to be infused with Cryo to form an unorthodox team, Klee dishes out only Pyro damage and makes her much more difficult to cheese the Abyss. For this, I rank her lower than Diluc in A tier, and better alternatives exist. Yoimiya was rated higher in 2.5 with the presence of the Golden Wolf Lord. The recent changes in 2.6 with how targeting works makes her even better at that job. But unfortunately, 2.6 isn't a single target shutdown, but an AoE damage check that doesn't favour Pyro characters. However, Yoimiya's good range and ability to act as a driver for other elements makes her much better than Diluc and Klee to activate her supports. Nonetheless, she can't be infused with other elements as well, other than Pyro, and is largely single target in nature. I'll rank her A tier, but higher than both Klee and Diluc. Better alternatives exist. Zhongli and his shield plus resistance shredding has been a mainstay for most Abyss teams since his release. Despite corrosion and anti-shield mechanics, he still remains very relevant across the patches, and 2.6 is no different. While there is nothing wrong with his kit in general, characters like Diona offers a better mix of cryo application and shielding for the second half, and Kokomi is able to fill in for Zhongli quite well in the first half. Hutao, Eula, Itto are also not the favourite child of MiHoYo this rotation, and hence, I'll rank him a high S tier, just shy of a double S tier. Albedo offers great value with his off-field damage, buffing and burst support capabilities. My only gripe with him is that he generally competes with Kazuha for a similar slot, and for this rotation, Kazuha is still the superior pick at tackling the Abyss. A+ tier, stable and never a poor choice for the most part is Albedo. Itto faces similar issues as Eula. While the team comps revolving around him generally work decently well against the Abyss lineup, there are better and more efficient methods of clearing it. It will be akin of using a sledgehammer to close the windows. Why would you do that? A+ tier, a strong DPS with decent teams for the enemy lineup, but better alternatives exist. In my opinion, Mona is the best standard 5-star of 2.6. Hydro as an element can be played both in the second half for a freeze comp and is best in slot for the first half. Morgana, a team consisting of Mona, Ganyu, Diana and Venti, is a meta freeze team that works excellently when Venti is in flavor, and Mona's re-rating reflects this. Mona competes with 3 other 5 stars in the Hydro category, and her rating is a comparable one within her Elemental category. S-tier Mona, driven both by a rising importance of Hydro and Venti's revival, but I wish to point out that I do believe she will work better than most other Elemental characters in her tier for this Abyss rotation. Across the board, Hydro has a solid rating this rotation and Childe is no exception. Unfortunately, Tartaglia doesn't perform as well in Freeze compared to Mona or Kokomi, making him likely to be restricted to a first half usage if he was your only Hydro character. Compared to the other 5 stars, this limits his versatility, but I do consider him the premier Hydro DPS and performs well this Abyss too. S tier. And if you guys have been enjoying the video thus far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe as we'll be doing this analysis every patch. Now, Kamisato Ayato. MiHoYo knows how good Hydro is as an element, and that is why till today we only have 2 4-star Hydro characters. Like I mentioned, Hydro is the best element in 2.6 because it can be played in either half of the Abyss, being best in slot in the first half and a freeze enabler for the second half. Ayato's Hydro application in an AoE is nearly unparalleled and enables Vaporize Xiangling teams, Electro Charge teams and Freeze teams alike. If built well, he adds good instances of damage and buffs the team's normal attack as well. I've done plenty of videos on Ayato already and will link a playlist in the card above. I found that a double Geo, double Hydro team is also pretty underrated as well. Double S tier in 2.6 for me, and no surprise given it's his banners rotation. Sangonomiya Kokomi. For all the reasons mentioned for Ayato, Kokomi does them just as well. And not only that, she allows you to run Fischl and Beidou pair with an offensive Anemo unit as the last slot. Kokomi being a ranged character also allows her to be a better driver for Beidou and Fischl's Electro application, and in the second half as a freeze enabler, she allows you to run an offensive cryo character like Rosaria or Shenhe, and can also be a Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer carrier. I know this rating will raise some eyebrows, but do me a favor before commenting on Kokomi and watch this F2P Kokomi comp in the Abyss and see how it shreds it. If only we had an Electro healer in 2.6 to battery Beidou, but for now, I'll rank Kokomi double S tier and possibly the second best character in 2.6, just behind Kazuha. Check back in 2.7 to see how the meta shifted. Until then, check out these 2 other tier list videos that you might find interesting as well. See you in the next one.